Sonic the Hedgehog was the very first Sonic game I've ever... Wait. God damn it, hold on. Okay, there we go. Sonic the Hedgehog was the very first Sonic game I've ever played, and I liked it a lot. The levels look cool, the colors are vibrant, the music's fucking amazing. Seriously, nobody gives the music in this game enough attention. It's fucking Yuzo Koshiro, guys! Then I played the Sega Genesis games. The levels looked cooler, the colors were more vibrant, but all I could think was, holy shit, speed! So I became a Sonic fan. I was always on the lookout for the next Sonic. I never owned a Dreamcast, but I was enthralled to see Sonic Adventure 2 and then later Sonic Adventure 1 come to the GameCube, both with extra content not found on the Dreamcast versions. I own Sonic Mega Collection and Sonic Gems Collection. I once had the PC version of Sonic R and Sonic 3D Blast. Hell, I even used to have the Sonic and Knuckles Collection. I own Sonic Heroes, Shadow the Hedgehog, Sonic 06, Sonic Unleashed, Sonic Generations, both episodes of Sonic 4, both entries in the Storybook series, not to mention a good number of handheld titles like the Advance and Rush series. And thanks to Sonic Adventure DX for the GameCube, I was able to play all the Sonic Game Gear titles. Yep. I was a regular Sonic aficionado. And played Sonic Battle in a while. I still need to finish Sonic Chronicles. Ooh, Sonic Colors is still in a shrink wrap. Never really cared for Sonic Forces. Or Sonic Lost World for that matter, even when it was first revealed. But then something peculiar happened. I kinda stopped liking Sonic games. I mean, not just the modern games, but the old ones as well. It was slow and hardly noticeable, but as my time progressed through adulthood, my taste in video games was changing, and I became more and more cynical towards the games that I enjoyed, and I began to notice their flaws more clearly. Although I still liked most of these games, Sonic games, however, were a special case. Going back and playing these games again, I found myself just not having fun with most of them. Why did I like those games when I was a kid? Was it because of the cool-looking levels, the vibrant colors, the kick-ass music? Because when I remember my experience with those games as a child, I also remember getting frustrated with them, but I thought maybe that was because I was just a kid who didn't know any better. But I think maybe something else was going on. I think I was just so impressed by not just the levels and music, but the speed, the presentation, the loops, the characters, etc. Basically a lot of stuff that had nothing to do with actually playing the games. In fact, I don't think I even cared about the gameplay up until just recently. Back then, I never cared if a game was good or bad. I only liked them because, well, they were games at all. Video games was still a new thing to me throughout my K-12 years, and I was always playing new ones, so I never really had any quality standards. Super Mario 64 was as good as Superman 64. Street Fighter 2 was as good as Shaq Fu. Logical Journey of the Zoombinis Deluxe was as good as Mario's Time Machine. And Sonic the Hedgehog was as good as Bubsy Claws Encounters of the Third Kind. When it came to Sonic games, that mentality somehow carried over into adulthood. And that's when it occurred to me. I never really liked Sonic games. I just thought I did. I've yet to find any decent videos expressing a negative opinion towards Sonic games in general. And any open-minded individual who originally did dislike the franchise ultimately came out having a change of heart. It kinda gives me this uneasy feeling that there is no way to not like the mainline games without having a sound, solid, and logical asterisk-free reason to. So, being one of the seemingly very few individuals that still have this distaste, I wanted to make my own video explaining why I hold the opinion that I do regarding Sonic games and see if I can explain my reasons any better. Now, I'm aware that this seems like a very controversial opinion to have for most people because the idea of not liking the franchise is simply unfathomable, so I understand if anyone who's watching this video expecting to get PO tells me that I just need to get good or that I only hate Sonic games because Egoraptor, or Red Letter Media, or IGN, Tommy Tallarico, or whatever. However, I'm not gonna sit here and reassure you that I'm not a blind Sonic hater because who knows? Maybe I am, but I just don't know it. Maybe I'm just stupid. You never really know if your videos hold any value until you put them out there for the world to point and laugh at.
I'm prepared to face the consequences of my betrayal.
Now, before I continue, I want to make a few disclaimers. One, I will be talking primarily about Sonic 3, as that game seems to be the one to beat when talking about Sonic games. At least according to, well, you, the viewer. Let's just be blunt here. Yes, there are things in other Sonic games that aren't in this one and vice versa, but this game, at least from what I hear, seems to do everything right to make a good Sonic game, like speed, platforming, exploration, and whatever else. So before I can like any other Sonic game, I have to like this one first, and thus this game is what I'll be using to get my point across. 2. At this point in time, it should go without saying, but whenever I say Sonic 3, I'm referring to Sonic 3 and Knuckles, unless I specifically state otherwise. This just makes it more convenient for me, so if I say something like Super Emeralds or the Doomsday Zone when talking about Sonic 3, that's why. 3. The primary goal of this video is for me to like Sonic games. So the version of Sonic 3 that I'm playing is the fan-made ROM hack Sonic 3 Complete, as that version is, from what I hear, the ideal way to play Sonic 3. Also, because of how incredibly easier it is to be stupid and ignorant than smart and observant, I think I need to list a few senses that should be common but for some reason aren't, just to minimize the amount of antagonizing that this video of an unpopular opinion will inevitably generate. 1. The title of this video is Why I Don't Like Sonic Games, not Why I Hate Sonic Games. That would be inaccurate, immature, and misleading as hell. 2. The title of this video is Why I Don't Like Sonic Games, not Sonic Games Are Garbage and Here's Why. That would be inaccurate, immature, and misleading as hell. 3. The title of this video is Why I Don't Like Sonic Games, not Why You Shouldn't Like Sonic Games. Because I want you to convince me to change my opinion, not the other way around. 3 and Knuckles. Convince. So to start, what do I like about Sonic 3? Basically, everything else. By that, I mean the graphics, the music, the sound effects, the presentation, the character designs, the spectacle, the screw attack, pretty much everything that has nothing to do with putting a controller in your hands and actually playing the damn games. With a few exceptions, starting with the bosses. I do like how most of these bosses are fought, having clever ways of dealing with them. Some involve using their own weapons against themselves, others have you exposing their weak spots before you can hit them, and some do both. They're pretty good overall, but there are a couple of duds, like Carnival Night Zone Act 2, where there's no way to hit him other than from above, and he takes fucking forever to load, and he takes so many hits. In a few bosses, you can flat out break with a shield. Okay, I know I said I was gonna get most of the stuff I like out of the way first, but this is the only place I can really talk about this in the video, so just bear with me. I mean, I like the elemental shields with their different ways of protecting you. I like that each one gives Sonic a unique ability, with the bubble shields being the most useless and the electric shields being OP as hell. But with the flame shield making you invulnerable to fire damage, you can virtually eliminate any semblance of challenge from some of these bosses, like Angel Island Zone Act 1 and 2, Flying Battery Zone Act 2 plus a spin dash, and Mushroom Valley Zone Act 1 and arguably 2. Hell, Lava Reef Zone Act 2 fucking gives you a fire shield right before. What the fuck do I do, not grab it? The final boss is a joke. For the first phase, all you have to do is rev up a spin dash, and that's it. Riveting. The second phase is also pretty boring. Just jump over the Yoga Fire Sneeze Edition, assuming you're not good enough to bring a fire shield through Death Egg Zone Act 2. Hit his Baldy McNose hair, hit the base once, then time a jump over the laser and hit the base again if you're good enough. Rinse and repeat. Yes, it's a little more complex than the previous phase, but once you know what to do, it's actually kind of easy. Phase 3, just run and jump. Don't fall behind and you're done. I guess this was supposed to be some Nathan Drake-ass cutscene battle or something, seeing that the timer stopped it. Fine, whatever. And now we're at the Doomsday Zone, the level you can play once you have all the Chaos Emeralds. This is where the controls change to something completely different. Rather than running, now you're flying in space as Supersonic. They get rid of the momentum from Sonic's movement entirely, and you're more in control of what he does and where he goes. Anyway, the stage itself. First you play a segment where you have to avoid asteroids and missiles while collecting as many rings as you can to stay super. Okay, cool, sounds simple enough. Now on to the true final boss. On the first phase, you'd think you're supposed to just run into him. I mean, that's what you've been doing through most of the other bosses before this, but no. What you're actually supposed to do is direct his own homing missiles at him. But it can't just be any old where. You're supposed to direct them towards the head. Unfortunately, that's not as simple as it sounds. See, there's a very awkward hitbox on the missiles that needs to come in contact with a very awkward hurtbox on the boss, and they have a very awkward homing mechanic. Not helping is that you're also trying to avoid the friendliness pellets. They don't send you back as far as the missiles do, and thanks to the new controls for this level, they're not too much of a nuisance by themselves. I didn't have too much trouble with this phase of the fight, but bobbing and weaving around the lemon heads while redirecting the missiles just makes this a very awkward phase to go through. It's not good, but it's not bad, it's just very awkward. The second phase is much more straightforward. After wasting 15 rings just to segue into it, just speed up and hit them a few times while dodging asteroids and missiles and grabbing scarcer rings. But the first time you play this phase, you'd initially think that you were just in another ring gathering segment. I kinda wish there was like an arrow or something that tells you that you need to use the boost to chase. The boss difficulties are just all over the place. Later bosses are easier than earlier ones and vice versa, and that's not just counting the vanilla Sonic 3 and Sonic & Knuckles differences. One example is that Marble Garden Zone Act 2's boss is easier than Hydrocity Zone Act 2's boss. Wait, is it Hydrocity or Hydro City? I mean, it doesn't feel like a city as much as a temple, plus it's all one word, so wouldn't the former make sense? However, there is one particular boss that I did enjoy fighting very much. Sky Sanctuary Zone. Mechasonic probably has to be my favorite boss in the whole game. He feels a lot like a Mega Man boss with his different ways of telegraphing his moves and figuring out how to avoid his attacks. You can only deal damage by attacking his front, and anywhere else just damages you, so you can't just brute force your way through this one. I don't know why, but I get this thrill from just watching how he moves and always thinking of what he's gonna do next. Is he gonna jump again or dash forward? Is he gonna turn around before he lands? If not, then I better be ready to jump over him when he backs up to the other side of the screen and then run in and steal a hit. I really like that this is even the final boss in Knuckles' playthrough. I think the theme song accompanies it quite nicely. Seriously, this should have been Mechasonic's theme. Super Mechasonic's also pretty fun. I just wish he didn't waste so much time being all like, "Holy shit, I can fly! Whee!" Oh yeah, I should probably do something. And speaking of Knuckles, I did kinda like his Angel Island Zone Act 2 stage. Along with it being much more platformer-oriented than the rest of the game, this is actually one of the more forgiving levels in my opinion. And with this being a Knuckles-only part of the game minus the boss, I'd say his gliding and climbing abilities are utilized fairly well. Hell, even the ramps and loops are friendlier this time around. Most of the level is small enough to allow you to take your time and get to know where most everything is, which is great for exploring without feeling the need to backtrack too much. Too bad there's nothing here worth looking for. Come on, guys, this was a perfect level to put a few giant rings. I mean, this was the only level in the entire game I ever found myself wanting to replay, because considering that everyone claims that Sonic games are all about— Wait, I'm getting ahead of myself, let's move on. Okay, next is Blue Sphere. Turn them all red, you win. Simple as that. Surround blue spheres with red ones, turn them all into rings, and make some space. Fucking genius, I love that shit. I like that each map has a different gimmick to them, like some maps have the blue spheres act as, like, one-way gates into different rooms, if you know what I mean. Because this is a special stage, the speed increases every 30 seconds, but by the time you're at Mach 3 or so, you should already be in the zone and have a good idea where everything is, so if I screw up somewhere or failed, I feel like it was my own fault and that I could have avoided it. You know, now that I think about it, I can't recall a single time I blamed the game for screwing me over. Either I didn't make a good enough mental map, or I lost focus for a second, I missed time to jump, I made a wrong turn at Albuquerque, I spent too much time in a level, etc. Everything just came back to me. Maybe it's different in the Sonic 1 lock-on levels, I don't know. Maybe I should make a convince me to hate Blue Sphere livestream. Nobody will watch it. As far as non-Sonic 3 special stages go, I like the UFO Hunt from Sonic CD, I fucking love the UFO Chase from Sonic Mania. Sonic 4 Episode 1s were basically just Camel Tree, but not as good, but I did like the idea. I kinda liked the half-pipe stages from Sonic Rush, probably because of the removal of the physics from the controls in Sonic 2, but from the 4th or 5th stage onward, it had some of that unfair memorization shit that people seem to love so much. Like, you know how rings and mines appear on one side of the half-pipe while it's turning towards said side, and you can't see them? Can't stand that shit, man. And one more that I'll talk about later on. There are some things about it I want to bring up that won't have as much of an effect if I did so here, but right now, it's time for the reason you're watching this video. World Saving! So as I indirectly stated before, most of my issues with Sonic games come from the gameplay. I like the music, I like the graphics, I like all that jazz. The stories I really couldn't give two shits less about, adventure series or otherwise. But at the end of the day, these are still video games. Video games are made to be played, not watched. And if the gameplay falls flat and the game itself just isn't fun to play, everything else doesn't matter. That's just how I judge games. You know, maybe that's what the iconic finger waving is supposed to mean.
Don't judge me, you little shit.
Wouldn't want to judge someone. That would be judgmental.
The most common criticism that Sonic fans seem to take issue with people saying is, all you do is hold right and occasionally press A. Now, on the surface that may sound unreasonable, but then again, anyone can make any criticism sound unreasonable by keeping it as vague as possible. Here, I'll do it right now. Guitar Hero, all you do is hold frets and occasionally flick a strum bar. Tetris, all you do is press left and occasionally press A. Secret of Monkey Island, all you do is click on stuff and occasionally click on stuff. Gradius, all you do is rock the D-pad everywhere, press A and occasionally press B. Call of Duty, all you do is fiddle around with both control sticks and occasionally press the fire button. Dance Dance Revolution, God, I haven't heard that name in a long time. All you do is step on panels and occasionally jump on two at the same time. Super Mario Brothers, all you do is hold right and occasionally press A. I mean, if you want to get technical, sure, maybe that's not all you do, but it kind of is. It may not be the best way to summarize the criticism, but I don't think it's a wrong way to. I think what they mean when they say that is that Sonic games don't require much thought or focus to play them. I mean, most of the time you're just watching Sonic roll around at the speed of sound, show you how it all began, then when it's time to do something, just keep jumping on enemies and platforms and shit until the next blast processing demonstration, and if you get hit, well, big fucking deal. Just pick up some of the rings that you dropped and continue on your merry way. I mean, the combat mechanics in Sonic games aren't even all that complicated. You don't have to just jump on top of enemies like in Mario, you just have to be in ball form by the time you touch an enemy to defeat it, whether you're jumping, rolling, launching off a ramp, revving up a spin dash, or whatever. I wouldn't really mind the game being like that if it wasn't for probably the biggest problem that I have with Sonic games, is that because there's only so much that's visible on screen, I can't see shit when I'm going 12 miles per second, or in some cases, per decade, meaning that most of the time if I end up running face first into an enemy or a bed of spikes, or worse, getting instantly killed from either being crushed or falling into a bottomless pit. Sonic Rush! It's because it just came out of nowhere and I couldn't do anything about it, so all I can really do is just pray I don't die and hope for the best. I know that some games have tried to remedy this issue. The iOS versions of Sonic 1 and 2 added widescreen support so you can see a little bit more ahead of you. Although I don't think that's what Daddy Palehead had in mind. In games like Sonic 3D Blast and a few of the Game Gear Sonic titles, when you're facing a direction, the screen scrolls towards said direction, giving you more screen to see stuff. That, coupled with Sonic not being able to run all that fast in those games, gives you a bit of an easier time to react to shit, and ergo reducing the amount of frustration you'll have to go through by a tad. When it comes to jumping up stuff or taking a leap of faith when dropping, you are able to look up or down to see where you're going. But to do that, you have to come to a dead stop and, in most games, hold the button for 2 whole seconds before the screen scrolls towards where you want to go. Pace killer much? For the most part, there doesn't seem to be a whole lot that you can do, at least on the Sega Genesis, that doesn't involve shrinking all the sprites down to Sonic 3 competition mode size. I completely forgot that mode existed. Now, under normal circumstances, not being able to see where you're going would make a game unreasonably difficult, but here's the ring, though. That was supposed to be a hint, Breath of the Wild. A standard curve on the difficulty chart would look something like this. A level starts off easy and then gets progressively harder until you beat it. Then the next level would drop the difficulty to about halfway down from the last point, and then from there, just rinse and repeat through the whole game. But if I were to draw the difficulty curve for Sonic 3, I would probably just start doodling. Sonic games aren't really as hard as much as they're just unfairly irritating because the ring system was designed for the sole purpose of, how Yuji Naka puts it, playing recklessly. So saying that these games reward skill when there's very little skill needed to begin with just doesn't make a whole lot of sense unless you're being a smartass about it. Hell, I needed more patience with the way these games work. It just seems to me like the ring system was really a workaround for taking cheap damage so the game could maintain the speed that they wanted Sonic to be all about. And I'm willing to bet most of you people would like the first 2 Bubsy games way the hell more if they did the same thing.
What? Are you denying it?
The most common rebuttal that I hear to most general criticism of Sonic games, and one that I hear so often that it honestly kind of surprises me that no one else has even attempted to refute it before me, is that you have to replay and memorize the levels in order to enjoy Sonic games. Now, forgive me for not being as civil about this as I would like, but
I'm prepared to face...
that is fucking retarded! If you can use this argument to defend Sonic games and have the whole fucking planet agree with you, then why, oh why don't we say that about games like Sonic 4 and Secret Rings? Oh, they're not really bad games, you just have to replay them 40 fucking times and memorize the levels, and if they control differently, then just get used to it and you'll have fun. If you take damage or die unfairly or trigger any game-breaking glitches, well, that's not the game's fault, that's just encouraging player improvement. You just don't want to take the time to get better. Stop bitching and moaning and learn the fucking games inside out. Don't fucking tell me the controls are unresponsive or clunky or what the fuck. You're just being a whiny little bitch. Shanti. Alright, sorry about that. Look, here's the thing. I want a game to be fun the first time I play— WAIT! Look, I'm not saying that a game should be most enjoyable on your first playthrough. I don't have a problem with games being more enjoyable the second time you play it through. What I'm saying is that a game should be enjoyable on any number of playthroughs, including the first, and that is not an unreasonable desire to have, whether we're talking about Sonic games or not. I want a game to be fun the first time I play it through, and that first time should make me want to replay it because I enjoyed it. Sonic games just don't do that for me. In fact, from what I hear, they rely solely on you giving it a second chance, or just any chance past its first. That was the developer's primary intention, but the practice was executed in a way that's really only good for speedrunning, which was the entire reason Sonic was ever created in the first place. But speedrunning a game should only come second to just playing it and enjoying it. Speedruns kind of require you to replay the game a lot first so you'll know everything about the levels and techniques and exploits and shit to get fast times in the first place. I mean, how often do you see someone speedrun a game the first time they play it? I mean, do you think that the people who speedrun the treasure hunting stages in the Sonic Adventure games just knew where all the emerald pieces, spawn points, and efficient routes to take were right out of the gate? The idea of Sonic games being meant to be replayed feels a lot like damage control when I can't enjoy it the first time I play it through. In fact, let's talk about Super Mario Bros. For a spell, the very game that was solely responsible for the existence of Sonic. I loved this game the first time I played it, and I still love it to this day. Alongside its challenging platforming, coins were scarce, making them feel more important if I were gunning for an extra life by collecting 100 of them. If I was big and got hit, I would play more cautiously because I was always on the lookout for a mushroom and then later a fire flower to shoot fireballs and take out enemies more easily. Even then, I still needed to take care not to get hit because of how valuable the fire flower was to me. The difficulty curve was just right, new enemies were being steadily introduced and used in unique ways, and the levels didn't get too hard too quickly, so I always felt like I was being properly tested, with the next level being just a little harder than the last all the way up until the end. My only gripe with this game is that Mario controls too slippery for my taste, but that's really it. Anyway, Super Mario Bros. Wasn't really made with speedrunning in mind. It was more so about the challenging platforming. I mean, you could speed through it as fast as possible if you wanted. The game does give you the tools to allow you to do that. Hell, sometimes you're even required to build up a little momentum in order to jump higher and reach a platform. But the satisfaction of completing a level comes from the fact that you made it over those tight jumps and through those tricky enemies. You didn't need to memorize a damn thing. Okay, 7-4 and 8-4 are the exceptions. I think they should have had, like, maybe subtle hints telling you which routes to take to progress, maybe with the blocks. I mean, I liked how the levels seamlessly looped like that, but I'm sure they could have made something work. 4-4, well, that was just a dick thing to do to the player. But I digress. For the most part, nothing felt cheap for a first-time run. Anytime I got hit or died, I saw it coming, and I knew I could have done something about it. But I didn't, because I wasn't good enough. Or I was just being stupid. I didn't need to have played these levels before to know how to avoid that enemy or clear that obstacle. The game was already showing me what I needed to do, and it was just a matter of doing it. And because this was how most of the game played out, I rarely found myself getting pissed off at it rather than myself, because it wasn't that kind of game. You see what I'm saying, right? Replaying a level should never be justification for cheap deaths and unforeseeable traps. Whenever I get hit in a Sonic game, it almost never feels like it was my own fault, and the only way for me to have avoided it the first time is if I had just known that it was there beforehand. And before anyone says that I just suck at Sonic games and that I didn't react fast enough, let me explain something to you. According to Human Benchmark's reaction test page, the average reaction time of a regular human being is about 0.24 seconds. Now, when talking about video games, we'll have to add about 0.03 seconds to make up the average delay time of a computer or TV screen. Though it is possible that some people performing this test on a touch screen may skew the overall results a little, along with one's reaction times fluctuating in between attempts, I don't think it makes that much of a difference. Now, assuming Sonic is running on foot at top speed on a flat plane, as soon as a stationary enemy appears on one side of the screen, it takes about 0.358 seconds for Sonic to run into it and get hit. Adding on the 0.03 seconds for the delay from pressing a button on your controller to Sonic actually jumping, you would have only about 0.328 seconds to do something before you get a face full of with only a 0.058 second error margin, which is just barely 3 frames at 60 frames per second. And that's a pretty generous number compared to Red Letter Media's 8 frames at 30 frames per second, or 0.267 seconds. Yeah, no, you can't use that argument. You're better off just slowing the hell down and give you more time.
Well, give me some more goddamn screen space!
Now let's compare this to a Sonic game that I do like, Sonic 1 for the Sega Master System, and see how much time you have to react to shit in that game. Now, because this game doesn't have a debug mode like Sonic 3 does, and because my PC can't handle recording 60 frames per second, these results might have a wider ballpark than the ones for Sonic 3. So, at 30 frames per second, drum roll please, you have about 18 frames, or 0.6 seconds. Now that's more like it. Because Sonic can't go as fast in this game, you're actually able to take your time without having to limit your momentum as much as in other Sonic games. No prayers needed here, folks. The developers were aware of the limitations of the Master System when compared to the Genesis, and they designed the game with these limitations in mind and made it work. The platforming feels fair with rarely any cheap traps, resulting in an enjoyable experience. Not a great one, mind you. I mean, I still wish that the screen would pan towards the direction I'm running like the Game Gear version does, but it's better than, well, this. But Lord knows nobody wants Sonic to be without his speed, so the only other thing I can imagine these games doing to fix this issue is to essentially do what Castlevania Harmony of Despair does with its camera. In that game, you can click the control stick to change between different camera zooming options on the fly. You can play with the camera zoomed into like Symphony of the Night size, 3/4 that size, half that size, or you could just play with the whole fucking map in view. How cool and useful would that be in a Sonic game? Rather than looking at this, you can see all of this. Not only will players have more screen space and ergo more time to react, but pre-existing fans can keep their default camera view and play the way they always have if they so wish, so no one loses anything. If someone made a mod for Sonic 3 that did something like that, plus maybe have the camera automatically set a fixed zoom once you get to the bosses, I would probably like it way more. Now, I can't say that with absolute certainty, since I don't recall playing such a Sonic game, but if it turns out that that isn't the problem, then well, I'll figure something out. I don't know if a ROM hack would be the way to go. I don't know much about the inner workings of a Sega Genesis, but I can imagine it being pretty overwhelming for the console to display and animate so many things at once, even with blast processing. I can also imagine it being pretty difficult to shrink most of the sprites down without everything looking like Dippin' Dots, but we have the technology to make it work outside of the Genesis, so maybe do something like what Mr. Cranium with the Restraining Order Against the Sun did with Sonic 1, 2, and CD, but with that camera thing I mentioned earlier, plus using the right analog stick to pan the camera in the same way, because it seems to me that most of the issues that I have with these games stem from not being able to see where you're going. This isn't something that a simple widescreen mod is gonna fix.
Well, you can solve that problem instantly by pushing down on the D-pad so you can just roll into the enemies.
That doesn't exactly address my point. I mean, that would certainly help with killing the enemy, setting aside that you completely sacrifice horizontal control while rolling and your only option during that time is jumping, but it still requires me to know that it's there. Remember, assuming you're running at top speed, you only have a little over a quarter of a second to react to the enemy appearing on screen. Not to mention that it could be an enemy that either shoots bullets or damages you if you try to attack it from the front or top. Hell, it could even just be a better wall of spikes. You don't know what's there. Okay, maybe you do, because you've played this game 12,000 times, but I shouldn't have to. I mean, how would you like to play Super Mario Bros. With only this much screen space? I would like to see where I'm going, thank you very much.
Oh, you don't need to see where you're going. Once you get to this point, you'll already know what's there. All you have to do is remember that it's there. And that way, the next time you come here, you'll...
Okay, now you're just coming up with excuses. I mean, that would be a valid point for something like the big-ass truck sequence in Sonic Adventure 2, because there's nothing in front of you worth looking out for, and whenever you need to make a turn, well, shit, the boost pad's got you covered, so you don't even need to do anything aside from just hold down and occasionally tap left and right to keep you on the center of the road. But once I finally struggle my way past all that cheap shit and I hit the next checkpoint, that's it. I'm done with that area. I'm not going back there. Not because I don't have a reason to. Well, I mean, I kinda don't. We'll cross that bridge when we get to it. What about Sonic 4, Episode 1? Lost Labyrinth Zone, Act 2? Huh? Are you gonna tell me you don't need to see where you're going in there? What about Bubsy, huh? Do I need blindfolds for the authentic experience or some shit?
That Gear Zone Act 1 is a good song!
Anyway, cheap hits, deaths, and enemy placements, don't try to justify it.
What about Bubsy, huh?
The next thing about everyone wanting you to replay stages to enjoy Sonic games, and actually I was just talking about this, is so you can get either a higher score or, more commonly, a faster time. So, I took the time to sit down and play Angel Island Zone Act 1 30 fucking times so I could memorize the level and enemy placements to help me get those fast times. And as I was shaving seconds off of my personal best, I just couldn't help but find myself saying, why am I doing this? No, this is a serious question. What do I want a fast time for? What do I unlock when I beat Green Hills Zone Act 1 in under 20 seconds? What do I get for beating the game in under half an hour? Do I unlock new levels, or get a better ending, or maybe a new character, or what? If the game doesn't reward me for getting a fast time, well, I'm not gonna go for it because I have no reason to. Yeah, I know that there are games like Sonic Advance 3 where you get medals for beating levels under the target times, but that's only something to do on the side if you want to. Boss battles in time attack mode for getting a gold medal in every single stage? Yeah, no, that's not something worth going out of my way for. That sounds more like a pain in the ass than it should be for something so minuscule.
Because I can't see shit!
I'm sorry, guys, but unless I get something worth going through the trouble of memorizing the levels so I can constantly go fast and keep beating my personal best, I'm not interested. I mean, why not implement getting fast times into standard progression or something, like making time attack mode being part of the main game? Here's an idea, I think we can make it work. How about, after beating all the acts of a zone, have the boss acts be locked behind some kind of time banks or something that accumulates the personal bests of all the zones and acts that you went through, and you have to get the total time under a certain target in order to unlock it and progress through the game. Now that would encourage player improvement. That would be a good reason to replay levels, because now I gotta go fast. If you want me to go fast, I need something to go fast for. Speed in and of itself is not a good reason.
Oh, for the spectacle of the thing.
Really? That's the common belief amongst smart people? Okay, then. Spectacle is really only there to be visually pleasing and plays no part in the gameplay. Sure, it looks cool, but so are most of the rides that Exhibit's ever pimped out. On the outside, they look bitchin', but on the inside, they do nothing for me. I can get the same amount of enjoyment from witnessing spectacle, if not more, by just watching a video on the internet. Sorry, but whether the reward is spectacle or speed itself, I'm more concerned about overcoming the challenges set forth than doing it as fast as humanly possible, because I am not a speedrunner. Like I said, speedrunning a game should only come second to just enjoying a game. And I know that Sonic games are not purely for just speedrunning only, because I liked these games as a kid. Besides, I already have a reward to look forward to. The ending. Because there is an end to reach here, and going fast is not a core requisite to obtain it. Speed is more of a tool to use than a reward to achieve. I mean, it would be one thing if these games were never-ending and you got a high score based off of how fast you were going and how long you can maintain your momentum, and then maybe I could get into these games. Here, let's go back to Tetris for a second. You got a playing field. Pieces are dropping and filling up the board. If they stack too high, you die.
Game over, man. Insert more coders. No, not my coders.
So what do? How do you not die? By making horizontal lines. They'll clear out, everything up top drops, you got more room to play, you delay the inevitable for a little longer. Enjoy it while you can. Another example, Space Invaders. You're in a ship, there's some aliens. You're bored. You need to make them happy by getting into the line of fire so they can blow you to Kingdom Come. Oh, what's that? You don't want to do that?
Well, shit, I guess you better shoot them first.
But just so you know, you're gonna have to give them what they came here for eventually. And that's really the only incentive you need to keep playing. The main objective for simple games like Tetris and Space Invaders is survive for as long as possible. And if you survive long enough, you'll even have a place on the high scoreboard to show for your efforts as an added bonus. The game ends when you, the player, are unable to go any further. Meanwhile, we got games like Super Mario Bros. And Sonic 3 that have an endpoint that you're trying to get to. The objective then becomes survive long enough to get to the end and beat the final boss. High scores and fast times be damned, you're just trying to get to the end. That's the main focus here. Beat the game. You don't need to go fast to do that, right? You only need to go fast so you don't run out of time. At least until you reach the next checkpoint, because once you hit the 10-minute limit and die, you go back to that checkpoint and the timer just resets back to 0 anyway. Plus, you're more than likely gonna have a shit ton of lives with more to come, so... what tension? This whole idea of speed being a reward just seems to me like self-delusion when there's clearly something else to work for here. You know, now that I think about it, you can technically make anything seem like a reward for doing anything at all. Like, see here. Objective. Push the A button. Congratulations, here's your reward. Sonic jumping.
Don't it feel good?
See? Speaking of things to work for,
Sonic games have plenty of paths to explore with lots of things to find to keep the game fresh and engaging or some shit.
Okay, before I tear that shit apart, let's look at how Sonic CD handles exploration. The level design of Sonic CD makes it so I can not just explore wherever I want without needing to restart a damn thing, it makes it so I can travel from the goalpost all the way back to the start of the level. Not only that, but the game gives me somewhat of a reason to explore every single level. Make a good future in all the zones to get the good ending. How do I do that? Well, first you gotta explore the level for a past signpost, which there are several of. Okay, now what? Explore the level and look for a place that lets you go fast enough to travel to the past, like 2 springs that bounce you back and forth, and if you can't find any of those, well, it's time to get creative. Explore the level and plan a route that will help you get and maintain the speed you need to travel back. Execute the plan, and if it's successful, boom, that's step 2 done. Step 3, explore the level for an enemy generator, destroy it, and that's it, you're done here. Get to the next stage and do it all again. In 10 minutes or less. I believe Sonic CD does a fair job at being a game about exploration. The level design allows me to go wherever the hell I want, gives me something to look for, and rewards me with a good future, and then later a good ending for all those good futures. Or you can just reach the end with 50 rings in hand and get the time stones. Learn to appreciate options! Console Wars in a nutshell. Although I do agree that the future signposts only really serve as obstacles to be avoided because there's virtually no reason to go to the future. Plus, you're already gonna be in the future in Act 3 anyway, so that one I'll give you. Stardust Speedway can go fuck itself, though. Tidal Tempest, you're cool. Don't let the man get you down. And you too, Laughing Zone. Y'all can hang with me anytime. Another example of exploration done right is Sonic 3D Blast, because, again, you have something to look for, and you're free to travel wherever you want in a level. The difference here, however, is that exploration is necessary to progress through the game, while Sonic CD's exploration was only optional, hence why I said you had somewhat of a reason. In Sonic 3D Blast, your objective is to explore the levels for sets of 5 flickies, then bring them all to a giant ring. Also, because you're not being pressured by a 10-minute time limit, not only can you take as much time as you need to complete the objective, but you can also freely traverse the levels at your own leisure if you so wish. The level design allows such a thing to be possible. Hell, you could even go back to certain sections in an act if you want, which can be really useful if you choose to look for 50 rings to bank with either Tails or Knuckles to play the special stages for a chance to get the Chaos Emeralds. And on an unrelated note, I do like the ring banking system. Sonic 1, 2, and CD could have totally used that. Maybe like put that at the checkpoints or something. And by the way, this is the special stage that I alluded to earlier. I'll call them Bridge, not to be confused with the level from Sonic 1 on the Master System and Game Gear. Now, I know that this is a huge deviation from what I'm supposed to be talking about, and I will get back to it, but I wanted to talk about this special stage because this is an example of challenging but fair. Everything is right in front of you, and you can see the placement of the rings and mines clearly. You know what you need to do at all times, so now it's just a matter of precision timing and steering, and if you hit a mine or don't get enough rings, you have no one to blame but yourself. The only complaint I have is that because of the 3D nature of these stages, it can get a little disorienting at times, but once you get into a rhythm of ring collecting and knowing when to jump, you can easily surpass this minor flaw. Aside from that, I just love these stages. I think the difficulty curve is just right throughout all 7 stages, and I was able to beat them all on my first try. It still got pretty tense in the later levels, and the only 2 times I hit a mine, honest to God, felt like it was my own fault because I lost focus for a second both times. And man, it felt good. I just had a lot of fun with these stages, even if they did only last for a few seconds each. Anyway, back to the exploration thing. Now, what about Sonic 3? Well, it's also only optional, but Sonic 3 has giant rings that contain Chaos Emeralds. So why do you want the Chaos Emeralds? Well, aside from being able to become Super Sonic, there is a good ending to this game. I want to get that ending, but I can't get to it unless I get those damn Chaos Emeralds. So, let's go get them. So how do you go about doing that? Well, you need to find a giant ring in the level that'll take you to a special stage. Turn all the blue spheres red to clear the stage, and you'll get a Chaos Emerald. Repeat the process until you have all 7. Okay, sounds pretty splendid. Man, I've been playing this level for a while, and I still haven't found any giant rings. You know, I can't help but feel like I didn't do a good enough job searching that last part there. Here, let me just go back and see if I missed... Oh. I can't. You fucking asshole. Why do I have to restart the entire goddamn zone just to go down a road I didn't go before to check and see if a giant ring was there somewhere? Especially if I'm looking for them in Act 2, because I would have to go through the entirety of Act 1 again, and most of these zones already take long as hell to get through anyway, given how fucking huge they are, and because of the 10-minute time limit, I probably wouldn't even have time to explore every nook and cranny without sacrificing a couple of lives. How is this a legitimate point? Save scumming is not something you should have to do when you're exploring for giant rings. Okay, fine. 2 can play that game. Once you beat the final boss, you unlock the stage select feature, and all the giant rings you found respawn and will never disappear again if you reload the save. So, what the hell is stopping me from reloading into Angel Island Zone and just jumping into that one giant ring near the beginning over and over until I get all the Chaos Emeralds, and then reloading back into Death Egg Zone and beating it again just so I can play the Doomsday Zone and get the good ending? Kinda defeats the purpose of looking for the giant rings, doesn't it? Anyway, once I do collect all 7 Chaos Emeralds, then my main focus becomes collect 50 rings, pray to God you don't get hit on the way up there, then transform as soon as you can to reduce the risk of losing your rings. What that also means is that I'm no longer searching for anything anymore. If I enter another giant ring, it takes away my Chaos Emeralds along with my ability to go super until I beat 7 more Blue Sphere levels. I've already met the good ending requirements. I don't need the giant rings anymore. And if I do get all the Super Emeralds, the giant rings don't take me to Blue Sphere anymore, and now they just give me 50 rings for the transformation, which is fine, but since there are already rings and ring boxes littered throughout the level, it's really not worth going out of my way to look for them anymore. Even when I'm invincible from being super, I still have to worry about not getting crushed unfairly, and there is a lot of that. And because being super also makes me go much faster and controlling Sonic feels much slicker, I would argue that that makes me have to be extra careful when traversing through dangerous places where I could die, because if I'm not, I risk getting crushed without seeing it coming. This especially becomes a problem when I'm jumping around in certain places with platforms that are either small and require precise jumping or unreachable without going fast to get to it. Thankfully, Sonic 3 Complete allows you to disable Super Mode whenever you want, but then that would put me at a risk of losing all my rings and I would have to start over if I get hit. Plus, if I cancel while I'm under 50 rings, I would still need to build back up to 50 before I can turn super again. It's like pick your poison, man. No matter what I do, no matter how I play or who I play as, I just can't bring myself to like Sonic games. If I try to go fast, it's frustrating. If I go slow, it's boring, and hell, even if I go slow, I still have to deal with some frustration. The only Sonic games that I do like are mostly ones that people don't like. I like Sonic Freeriders, for fuck's sake. I got all the achievements for Sonic Freeriders. Someone tell me that's normal. If you were to ask me how I would change Sonic games so I would like them more, I'm really not sure what my answer would be, since I just feel like I don't fully understand what a good Sonic game is supposed to be. And there are plenty of games out there that I like that do the whole going fast thing where I don't have to replay them to like because I already liked them the first time through. Don't think that wanting instant gratification for going fast is an irrational desire to have. I was able to achieve it in Sonic Generations, you guys saw that. Anybody remember the Fancy Pants games? The Newgrounds? No? It's on Steam now. Look, you'll never catch me saying that Sonic 3 is a horrible game, but I hesitate to say it's good. In fact, after playing through it as all three characters during my live streams, I think I might actually kind of hate it. Yeah, I know I said near the beginning of this video that I didn't, but maybe that's because I just didn't want to admit it. It's been years since I've made those rant videos on Master Blaster and the Little Big Planet community in general. And over the years of not having to think about those days, I'd like to believe that I've mellowed out a bit.
Cocksucking pain in the ass!
Well, at least to a minute degree. I don't ever want to hate anything. Hate is just such a strong term to use, and I try to avoid using it whenever there's a more accurate term to describe how I feel about something, and most of the time there is, but that doesn't seem to be the case with Sonic 3. It just feels unfair most of the time. If I'm not frustrated, I'm bored and then later exhausted. I had to force myself to play a second and third time against my better judgment because I still held out a tiny glimmer of hope that my mind would be changed, and for a second, it seemed like that was going to be the case, but when I finally finished all three playthroughs, I didn't feel any sense of accomplishment as much as I had a sigh of relief that it was all over. It just drained me. Hate is really the only way I can describe my experience with this game, and that is not something I'm okay with. The only things I like gameplay-wise are Blue Sphere, Angel Island Zone Act 2 as Knuckles, and some of the bosses, assuming you don't cheat your way through them. I mean, I guess it's not really cheating if the game allows you to do it, but God, it sure feels like it. And even though Blue Sphere basically serves as an anodyne to the agony I go through in Sonic 3, I can just play this minigame by plugging Sonic 1 into Sonic & Knuckles, or hell, by just selecting it in the main menu of the Sonic 3 Complete ROM, which pretty much eliminates any reason to play Sonic 3 again. But I still do. And the only reason I ever come back to this game is to try to figure out why I don't like these games, and every time it's the same result. That's kinda why I made this video. I'm getting desperate. I want to like these games again, so guys, all things considered, what am I doing wrong? Help me out here. I wonder what a roguelike Sonic game would be like. You know, levels randomly generating loops and enemies and trying to get fast times in those. Come on, it worked for Mario. It could totally work here. If you could let the players see where the fuck they're going. Okay, never mind.
My spectacle!